After the fire began to fade, and the gods withdrew behind their crumbling light, men rose from the dust like embers caught in the wind. They were fragile, but they endured. And in their endurance, the gods saw a reflection of something they could not name, something that frightened them. To keep the order of the world, Gwyn divided his great soul, gifting fragments of his power to mortal kings. He hoped that, by sharing his light, he could chain the dark forever. Among those who received his blessing were the rulers of a young city by the sea, 4 brothers in spirit, bound by oath and vision. They called their kingdom New Londo, and built it not upon conquest, but upon faith. A city for men, but with the grace of the gods. Its towers reached for the heavens, and its bridges shone with silver light. Scholars spoke of its beauty, priests called it a sanctuary, even the gods looked upon it with approval. The 4 kings ruled together in harmony. No envy, no greed, only the shared dream of preserving the fire and protecting their people from the dark that stirred below. And for a time they succeeded. The light held, the people flourished, the air was filled with the scent of burning incense and the sound of faith echoing from every tower. But the gods' gift was never pure. Power borrowed from a dying flame carries its own shadow. And deep beneath their city, something began to whisper. They were called the 4 kings, but they ruled as one. Brothers not by blood, but by purpose, for men bound by oath and trust. Each carried a fragment of Gwyn's power, a spark of divine fire that burned bright within mortal hearts. And from that flame they built a kingdom that gleamed like dawn upon the sea. The first king was wisdom, a scholar who sought truth even in silence. The second was courage, a warrior who believed that strength could shield the weak. The third was faith, a man who prayed not to be worshipped, but to understand the gods. And the fourth was mercy, the kindest of them all, whose heart never learned to fear the dark. Together they ruled New Londo in harmony. They were loved by their people, and the city prospered under their watchful gaze. Their thrones stood in a great circle of light, each one facing the other, a symbol of unity in a world divided by gods. But even unity cannot silence the hunger of the soul. Each king, in his quiet moments, looked into the fire that lived within him and saw it flicker. They began to dream of immortality, not for themselves, but for their kingdom. They wished for a light that would never fade, a city that time could not touch. And so their faith, once pure, began to twist. For what is devotion, if not the fear of losing what we love? When the whisper came, they were ready to listen. In the dark beneath New Londo, where the water stilled and the stone remembered, something ancient stirred. It did not come with thunder. It did not break the walls of their city. It came as a voice, soft, patient, endless. A serpent coiled in shadow, its scales older than flame, its eyes reflecting the memory of the first night. He called himself Koth, a seeker of truth, a speaker for the dark. He spoke not of chaos, nor of vengeance. He spoke of freedom. He told the kings that the flame was a lie, a dying light kept alive by fear, that the gods had stolen eternity from men, binding them to a cycle that could never end. He whispered of another path, a world without fire, where man would no longer bow to gods, nor to the burden of light. The kings listened, at first with doubt, then with wonder. God's words were not temptation, they were comfort. They promised release from the endless dread of fading. Each night, the serpent returned, his voice weaving through the cracks of their dreams. He showed them visions of a new dawn, a world shaped by their will, not by the gods. And one by one, the kings began to believe. They gathered in their hall of light and spoke of what they had seen. They told themselves it was not betrayal, but enlightenment. They would master the dark, not be consumed by it. But the abyss does not serve. It waits. It offers power only to reveal the hunger beneath. The day they opened their hearts to God's gift, the light of New Londo began to die. Beneath the ruins of Lordran, there is a city that no longer breathes. Its towers lie drowned beneath still waters. Its streets echo only with memory. Once it was called New Londo, a jewel of men, a beacon built in imitation of the gods. Its bridges gleamed with silver light, and its people spoke with pride of their kings, for souls bound by wisdom, each ruling a quarter of the city's heart. Their reign was just, their faith unwavering. They believed that light was eternal, that no shadow could touch their throne. But even in sunlight, the river below ran black. And in that river, the dark waited, patient, endless, unseen. Now the city sleeps beneath the water. Its bells are silent. Its walls glisten like wet stone in a dream. Ghosts drift through flooded corridors, their hands reaching for a surface they can no longer remember. The world above has forgotten New Londo. It remembers only the flood and the sacrifice that sealed its fate. Yet beneath those still waters, for shapes still linger, bound together by memory and sin. They were kings once, but kings do not rest easily. And so they wait, in the dark, beneath the weight of a promise that drowned the world. The change came quietly. There was no battle, no trumpet of war. Only the soft collapse of light, as the king's thrones dimmed one by one. The people of New Londo felt it first, their shadows lengthening, their prayers unanswered. The waters that once ran clear turned dark as oil. And from beneath the streets, a whisper began to rise, the same whisper that had once comforted their kings. The abyss was no longer a voice, it had become a sea. And the kings who had opened their hearts to its promise were the first to drown. Their faces twisted, their forms lost to time. The flame within them turned black and formless. They reached for power but found only hunger. Their crowns became shackles, their thrones graves. Their knights followed, bound by loyalty that could not comprehend what had become of them. Men of honor sank beneath the waves, their armor echoing like bells beneath the rising flood. The abyss rose through the city like breath, filling every street, every home, every prayer. The people screamed, but their cries only deepened the dark. From the towers above, the Seal Lords watched in silence, those entrusted with the final duty. They knew the truth. The abyss could not be destroyed, could only be contained. So they chose the unthinkable. They opened the gates, and the waters came. New Londo was drowned beneath its own mercy. Thousands died in silence, their souls sealed forever beneath the black tide. The four kings were buried in the depths, their light extinguished, their names erased from every chronicle. But even in death, their hunger endured. For the abyss does not end where the water stops. It only waits. Beneath the flood, time forgot to move. The towers of New Londo stood like gravestones, their arches glimmering beneath the black water. And in that drowned silence, the kings remained. They no longer wore crowns. They no longer spoke of faith or duty. Their forms were shadows, their voices a hum that trembled through the dark. They had become wraiths, feeding upon the souls that drifted near, desperate to fill the void within them. Once they had ruled men, now they ruled only silence. Their kingdom was a grave, their court a sea of ghosts that could not rest. The knights who had followed them wandered endlessly in the gloom, their eyes hollow, their blades rusted and cold. They no longer remembered whom they served, only that they must guard this place. Above, the world continued, forgetting the city that had saved it. But below, the abyss still stirred, alive, eternal, patient. Sometimes the waters moved, as if something vast shifted beneath. Sometimes a light flickered through the depths, a remnant of power the kings had once held. It shone faintly, then faded again, like the memory of a prayer half remembered. And in that flicker you could almost see them, for silhouettes standing in the dark, still facing each other, still bound by the promise they could not break. They had sought to preserve their kingdom forever. In that wish they had succeeded. For New Londo had become eternal, a kingdom without light, a throne without life. Power is not born from evil. It is born from longing. And the four kings longed only to protect what they loved. They believed that if they held their light tightly enough, it would never fade. That if they ruled with strength and faith, their people would be safe from the dark. But the flame they guarded was already dying. And when the serpent came with his promise, they did not see deception. They saw hope. They saw a way to preserve the light forever. The abyss did not take them by force, took them by faith. It whispered what they already wanted to hear, that they could be more than men, more than kings. But in seeking to master the dark, they became its voice. Their crowns became shadows. Their names became silence. And yet, in that silence, their choice still echoes. For every soul that hungers for power, for every heart that fears the end, their story remains. It is the story of all who loved the light too much to let it go, of those who drowned in their own devotion. Even now, beneath the waters, their spirits linger, not in rage, but in memory, waiting for the next wanderer brave enough or foolish enough to descend into their tomb. And when that wanderer comes, the kings will rise again, not as rulers, but as echoes of what they once were. Each strike they make, each soul they take, is not vengeance, but the desperate reaching of hands that once held light. And so the cycle turns, honor becomes hunger, faith becomes ruin, light becomes shadow. The four kings remain below, their promise fulfilled, their kingdom eternal. For power, once taken, never truly dies. It only sinks deeper, waiting for the next heart to hear its call. And so the fire dimmed once more,